The wedding date is locked in, and what should be a celebration has quietly turned into a countdown that could change everything. Because behind the scenes, a long-delayed financial battle has been forced into the open with a deadline that cannot be ignored. What was once a future promise is now an immediate threat, and the closer that date gets, the higher the stakes climb. Stay right here, because the move that just happened flips the entire power dynamic, and the fallout is only beginning. The wedding date is no longer a rumor, it is no longer a possibility, it is locked and sealed. And while most people would see that moment as the beginning of peace and happiness, what is happening behind the scenes tells a far more explosive story. Because this date is not just a celebration, it is a deadline, and every single day that passes tightens the pressure around a situation that has been allowed to sit unresolved for years. Sources close to the situation are quietly confirming that this moment marks a turning point that nobody expected to come this fast or this decisively. What had been dragged out with delays, excuses, and shifting priorities has now been pulled into the present and forced into action. The moment the wedding became real, everything changed, because it introduced something that had never existed before: a firm, non-movable timeline. And that timeline has become the most powerful tool in play. According to reports circulating among insiders, a legal demand has been issued that leaves no room for interpretation or negotiation. Resolve the shared land ownership before the wedding or face a forced outcome through the courts. This was not an emotional reaction, it was not impulsive, and it was not symbolic. It was strategic, deliberate, and calculated to eliminate every escape route that had previously been used. For years, the land represented potential, promises, and future plans, always just out of reach, always framed as something that would eventually benefit everyone, but never actually delivered. Now, that same land has become leverage, and that shift has sent shockwaves through Flagstaff. What once symbolized unity and long-term vision is now being used as a mechanism to secure closure and financial separation. Insiders say the move that triggered this escalation came when a quiet request was made, suggesting that ownership be transferred, framed as a clean break, framed as a fresh start, framed as something generous and convenient. The idea was presented as a way to move forward without complication, but what followed was the opposite of compliance. Instead of agreement came resistance, instead of silence came documentation, and instead of delay came demands. The refusal itself changed everything because it forced the issue into the open, and once that happened, there was no putting it back. The financial contributions were examined, the timelines were reviewed, and the imbalance that had long been minimized was finally acknowledged. When value is written down, it can no longer be dismissed, and once a deadline is attached, it becomes unavoidable. The demand reportedly includes fair market valuation and reimbursement for past investments, and the figures being discussed are not insignificant. This is not symbolic money. This is real, substantial equity, and the requirement that it be resolved before the wedding adds a layer of urgency that cannot be ignored. Weddings do not wait. They do not pause for unresolved business. They arrive whether everyone is ready or not, and that is exactly why this strategy works. It removes the ability to stall. It removes the ability to deflect, and it transforms a long-ignored situation into an immediate problem that must be addressed. The response from the other side has reportedly been disbelief, followed by urgency, because the implications are enormous. Either the funds are produced or the land enters a legal process that strips away emotion, sentiment, and vision and replaces it with procedure. Courts do not care about intentions or future dreams. They care about ownership and division, and that reality has created a sense of alarm that cannot be hidden. What once felt permanent now feels fragile, and every day that passes makes the options narrower. The land that was supposed to represent legacy is now threatening exposure, and the closer the wedding gets, the louder that ticking becomes, because there is no pause button and no way to reverse momentum. This is not about conflict, it is about finality, and that is what makes this moment so powerful. For years, decisions were postponed under the assumption that time would always be available. That assumption is gone. The clock is running, and every choice from this point forward carries consequences that cannot be undone. As the deadline approaches, the reality of the situation is reportedly becoming impossible to ignore, because resolving shared ownership is not about promises or future planning, it is about immediate access to cash, and that distinction has changed the tone of every conversation happening behind closed doors. Insiders describe a growing sense of urgency, as options that once felt theoretical are now being examined in detail, because when time runs out, decisions are no longer optional, they are required. What makes this moment so intense is that the resources that once supported everything are no longer flowing the same way. Income streams have narrowed, obligations have increased, and the cushion that allowed delays has vanished. This is where the pressure truly sets in, because land cannot be divided easily, and it cannot be converted quickly without consequence. When owners cannot agree, the process moves out of their hands and into a system that operates without sentiment. That knowledge alone is enough to create panic, because it means losing control over both timing and outcome. Observers familiar with the situation say that every possible avenue is being reviewed, from loans to asset liquidation to restructuring ownership. But none of these solutions are simple, and all of them come with long-term impact. What was once framed as stability is now being evaluated as liability, and that shift is unsettling. Meanwhile, on the other side of this equation, momentum is moving forward, not backward. Reports suggest that plans have already progressed with remarkable speed elsewhere, with a new property that reflects readiness, practicality, and intention rather than delay and uncertainty. This contrast is impossible to miss. Where one side is scrambling to respond, the other is building. Where one side is reacting, the other is choosing. The symbolism here matters because it highlights what preparation can do when paired with decisiveness. The wedding now represents more than a personal milestone. It marks a line between past entanglements and future independence, and that line is being enforced with clarity, not confrontation. Those close to the situation say there is a calm confidence in this approach because the groundwork has already been laid, numbers have been reviewed, documents prepared, and alternatives secured, which means there is no fear of walking away if demands are not met. That is the real leverage. Not anger, not ultimatums, but readiness. When one party can move forward regardless of the outcome, the balance of power shifts completely. This is why the tension feels so one-sided, because delay only harms one side while resolution benefits the other. The land that once anchored everyone together now threatens to unravel everything, and the longer it remains unresolved, the more damaging it becomes. There's also a wider ripple effect because this moment sets precedent. It shows that long-delayed decisions can be forced into resolution when someone is willing to attach them to a moment that cannot be postponed. That lesson is not lost on anyone watching from the sidelines, because once one account is settled, others may follow, and that possibility adds another layer of urgency to an already volatile situation. The window for quiet compromise is closing, and once it closes, the outcome will be determined by process rather than preference. As the wedding date draws closer, the options narrow further, and every attempt to delay only increases the cost. This is why the tension continues to build, because the end is coming, whether everyone is ready or not. And when it arrives, it will mark the conclusion of years of waiting and the beginning of a future that no longer carries unfinished business. As the situation moves closer to its unavoidable conclusion, the emotional weight of years of unresolved choices is reportedly settling in, because this is no longer about what might happen someday, it is about what must happen next, and that shift changes everything. Insiders say the atmosphere surrounding this standoff feels different from previous conflicts because there is no room left for negotiation through delay. The strategies that once worked, avoidance, reframing, promises of future cooperation, have lost their power in the face of preparation and certainty. What makes this phase so compelling is that it reveals the difference between holding on to an idea and holding on to a plan. Ideas can wait, plans execute, and what we are seeing now is the execution stage unfolding in real time. The approaching wedding has transformed from a personal milestone into a structural deadline that reorganizes priorities and exposes vulnerabilities. Those who once relied on time as a shield are now discovering that time can also be a weapon when used deliberately. This is where long-standing narratives begin to collapse because the assumptions that supported them no longer apply. The belief that issues could be revisited later, the confidence that resources would somehow appear, the expectation that relationships would absorb financial imbalance, all of that is being tested under pressure. Reports suggest that the stress is not just financial, but symbolic, because this moment represents a public reckoning with choices that were made privately. For years, viewers watched discussions about legacy, vision, and shared futures. Now, the outcome will be measured in resolution and closure rather than intention. Meanwhile, the forward momentum elsewhere continues uninterrupted, and that contrast is impossible to ignore. Progress is visible, tangible, and supported by a network that is actively participating rather than waiting to be convinced. That participation matters because it reinforces the idea that stability is built through action, not control. The growing sense among observers is that this is not simply a separation of assets, but a separation of eras. One era defined by postponement and hierarchy is giving way to another defined by autonomy and execution. The implications extend beyond one property because they demonstrate what happens when accountability meets readiness. When someone no longer needs permission to move forward, the dynamics shift instantly. That shift is what makes this moment feel so final, because once ownership questions are settled, there's no reason to revisit the past. The emotional ties that once complicated decisions lose their influence when outcomes are clearly defined. This is why the calm reported on one side feels so striking. It is the calm of someone who has already imagined every outcome and prepared for each one. Whether the resolution comes through agreements or process, the result is the same: freedom to move forward unencumbered. And that freedom is contagious because it shows others that long-delayed resolutions are possible when approached with clarity. The closer the deadline gets, the quieter the preparation becomes, because everything that needs to be said has already been documented. The noise will come later when outcomes become visible. For now, the tension lives in anticipation because everyone involved understands that the moment of decision is approaching fast, and when it arrives, there will be no ambiguity left, only consequences and closure. This story isn't ending with an argument or a conversation, it's ending with a deadline. And when that date arrives, there will be no more delays, no more promises, and no more control left to negotiate. What happens next will permanently change who walks away empowered and who is forced to let go. And the moment that decision becomes public, everything we thought was stable will finally collapse into the truth.